streaming development is a totally foreign concept to some people. If we look at the software and game dev category on Twitch right now, we see people making games, learning to code, designing, and everything in between. I myself have been streaming since 2015, and in that time, I've logged about 6,400 total hours streamed. I've clearly found it helpful to be doing it for that long, and that's why I'm making this video. I think it could be helpful for you too. We'll cover some benefits, some barriers, and some tips for getting you started on becoming a streamer. I've made a list of the top 3 benefits, in my opinion, which answer the question, why should I stream? Benefit number 1 is accountability. Have you ever been coding on your own and you hit a snare and you just immediately pick up your phone and start browsing social media? Streaming can help you avoid that. For one, it's just a different environment from your normal work, which can trigger different habits. But on top of that, if you have an audience, they're not going to want to watch you watch YouTube videos while they're waiting for you to do something. Streaming can help keep you on task, which means more time working on your project. Benefit number 2 is social connections. I've met real life friends, I found cool projects to work on, cool people to work with, and even sponsorship opportunities. But honestly, I think the most important part is just having constant connections throughout the day to help stave off loneliness. That company alone is enough to keep me sane as I'm working. Benefit number 3 is help, and it affects every part of the development process. It starts with learning. I can't tell you how many times I've had someone come into the stream and impart some knowledge to me that greatly sped up the learning process. But it goes even beyond learning. If you're coding or designing something, someone may share a tip that you otherwise never would have heard. They may even contextualize tasks as being more or less important to you. This kind of feedback is incredibly valuable because it gives you more input to consider before you make a decision. Those are the biggest benefits in my mind. If you feel like it's hard to stay on task, if you just want to build connections, or if you want some guidance as you work, then streaming is a good thing for you to try. If you like those benefits, but you're still hesitant, then this next section is for you, the barriers to streaming. Barrier number 1, I'm not confident in my abilities. People aren't necessarily tuning in, expecting to see an expert. As long as you're open to growth, both as a streamer and as a developer, then your current set of abilities doesn't matter as much as your mentality about them. Also, I will say that the vast majority of people you encounter, probably 95+%, are going to be helpful. You just don't come across that many detractors who are judging you for your abilities. Barrier number 2, I don't think people would watch me. Honestly, at the beginning, you'll probably have a small handful of viewers, but those are very important viewers because they form your core audience. They're the ones who are there to support you from the beginning. I'd say instead of focusing on whether people will watch, you should focus on the personal benefits that you get from streaming. So even if you have 0 viewers, you may still be putting more time into a project than you would have if you weren't streaming. Sure, you can't form connections or get help from 0 people, but growth comes with time and consistency. Barrier number 3, I don't have a great setup. 2 things do actually need to be decent enough for you to stream. One is your internet and the second is your computer. But beyond that, don't worry about your microphone quality, your camera quality, your lighting, etc. VTubers are actually pretty popular nowadays, which means that some people stream without ever showing their real face. If you decide down the road that you do like streaming, then you can always upgrade those things and they don't have to cost a lot of money. Barrier number 4, I'm worried about leaking things. There is always a risk in leaking something and it comes out in weird ways as you're streaming. For example, I don't share my birthday even with people in real life. But you know who's more than happy to share my birthday for me? Google and Microsoft. Sometimes I go to some of their sites and there's a banner and confetti coming down from the top of the page saying happy birthday, because usually you're the only person looking at your own computer screen. More important than birthdays though, you might have credentials or passwords or private notes that you don't want to share. The best you can really do is try to mitigate the risk of leaking those, and I think the best way of doing that is with separation. Make a new user account, try to work on a public GitHub repo instead of a private one, or just use dummy passwords for fake accounts. Barrier number 5, what if someone steals my code? Well, for one, it's copyrighted as soon as you write it. But 2, and I don't mean to sound harsh, no one probably wants it. It's not until code has proven some value that people typically want to take it. But if you're still concerned about all of that, you could always pick a project that doesn't depend on the code being the output. So for example, maybe you're trying to learn a new framework and the code isn't something you plan on keeping at the end of it. So those are the top 5 barriers to streaming with some suggestions on how to overcome them. I want to share one reason you shouldn't have for wanting to stream: money. Almost every dev job will pay more than what you'll get streaming unless you're maybe in the top 5 development streams. And I don't mean 5%, I mean 5. The numbers just generally aren't there. If you're still interested in streaming, then I've got some tips for you. I wanted to make sure they weren't the super obvious ones like keep a schedule, and this isn't a tutorial on how to set up your software. The first tip is to figure out your goals. Why do you want to stream? Sure, maybe it's because some YouTuber told you you should, but why did this video resonate with you? Do you want to explore streaming? Do you want to find cool people to work with? I find that it's good to list your goals up front so that you can figure out later if you've met them. One of the traps that you can fall into as a streamer is just pursuing growth without ever looking into what that growth means to you, because your viewer count is always in your face. I suggest not looking at that viewer count or hiding it, and always stream like someone is watching you. The second most important tip I have is to watch your own streams, especially at first. On Twitch, you actually have to set a setting to save your VODs, but then once you've done that, yeah, check out your streams. Is there a lot of dead time? Do you have a lot of hesitations as you speak? What do you like as a viewer when you're watching somebody? Are you applying that on your own stream? For example, when I tune into somebody's stream and they're physically not present, it makes me wonder, where did they go? When are they coming back? And that's why on my stream, I try to have timers or a reason for why I left. You can apply those same things to you based on what you like on other people's streams, or based on watching your own stream and figuring out what works and what doesn't. The third tip I have is for you to take action against people who are actively unhelpful in your stream. I did mention earlier that it's rare that you'll come across people who detract from the stream, but if you stream for long enough, it will happen. And there's this expression, the show must go on. What I see as a streamer is that it means you need to keep a positive mental state for the show to go on. So if there's someone who's actively hurting that state, it's going to make you associate that person with streaming, and then you'll want to do it less. It might ruin the experience for other people or even for yourself. So I look at this the same way I look at relationships. If you are in a relationship with someone and you know you're going to break up with them, but it's really hard to do, you don't just stay with them the rest of your life because that breakup is tough. I think you need to rip the Band-Aid off for something like this and just ban chatters who are detracting from the experience overall. Development on its own already takes a lot of cognitive input. But then when you're live streaming it, you have an audience and interactions and maybe some entertainment to consider. That takes energy, and if you're introverted, that might take a lot of energy. So don't underestimate that, and try to be wary of whether you find yourself burning out. Maybe don't schedule 5-hour-long streams after working a full day at your job. If you were streaming yourself playing video games, you could make progress in the game, or you could interact with chat, and you might be meeting your goals regardless. Maybe you're entertaining people and you're still having fun yourself. But if you're developing, ostensibly you care about getting some task done. Maybe you're learning something or you're trying to produce something. Every time you interact with your audience, you're potentially taking away from that productive time. And every time you're being productive, you're potentially taking away from that interactive time. It's tough to do both at once, especially as your audience grows into the tens or hundreds or thousands. I think the other thing that's potentially more insidious than this is losing track of context as you interact with your audience. So you might be working on a task and you've got some thought process going on, and then someone asks you a question and you lose that thought process. The way I get around this is by taking copious notes that help me snap my mental context back to what it is that I was working on. I just wanted to put this idea out there that you might benefit from streaming your own development. You've made it this far in the video, so you've at least considered it. If you're still interested, then pair Impulse to action and go download some streaming software. I use OBS for both these videos and for streaming, and it's super easy to set up. Finally, if your stream times on Twitch align with mine, let me know, and maybe I can raid you with some of my viewers. As always, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching.